everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Lottie and today we are doing my May stats and wrap up. I forgot to say this in my June TBR video, but happy Pride Month everyone. It is June officially and the gays are here, queer and not going anywhere. As May has come to a close, of course I will be doing my stats and wrap up for the month, talking about all of the books that I read in May. In May I did participate in 2 readathons, those being the Asian Readathon, which was created with Cindy, and that is a readathon to commemorate Asian, American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. There were 5 prompts for that readathon. I only had to read 1 book really to complete all of the prompts, but I did read 2 books which I think covered all of the prompts for that. I was in a bit of a slump during May, which may not seem like it when I get into the books that I read, but I did feel like a little bit slumpy, so I didn't read as much as I wanted to for Asian Readathon, but I try and read diversely throughout the year anyway. And then the second readathon that I participated in was Bookathon, the 48-hour round, which of course is created by Becca from Becca and the Books. That was a 48-hour readathon over 1 weekend where I try to read as much as I can to fulfill the prompts that came up every 12 hours. I do have a full reading vlog for that readathon, which will be up in the cards if you would like to go and check that out. It is an hour long, so I recommend grabbing a snack, grabbing a drink and sitting down all cozy to embrace my descent into madness during that weekend. So without further ado, let's get on into my statistics for May. So in May I read a total of 10 books, which was pretty good considering I was feeling quite slumpy during the month. Those 10 books were equal to 3,588 pages, which averages out to 115 pages per day. In terms of star ratings, I rated 1 book 2 stars, 3 books 3 stars, 5 books 4 stars and 1 book 5 stars, and that is an average of 3.6 stars per book. For genres, I read 4 romance books, 2 fantasy books, 2 sci-fi, 1 horror and 1 contemporary. So I read a very mixed bag in May, and I actually read more romance than fantasy, and fantasy is my most read genre, so I don't know what was going on with me in May. For media, I read 6 physical books, 2 ebooks, 1 audiobook, and I read 1 book with mixed media, so I both listened to and read physically. For format, 7 of the books that I read in May were novels, 2 were manga, and 1 was a comic. For our age categories, I read 5 adult books, 4 young adult books, and 1 middle grade. And finally, in terms of my TBR, 5 of the books that I read I hauled in 2022 and 5 of the books I have hauled previously. So now that's done and out of the way, let's get on into the books that I read in May. So starting off in May, I was on a little bit of a romance binge, and I do have a reading vlog for my first week of May up ready for you to view if you would like to go and check that out, where I tried to read 3 romance books in a week. If you remember from my May TBR video, I kind of set a TBR scrolls TBR, but also I wanted a lot of room for mood reading, and I think it's just because I was in a bit of a slump in May. So the first book that I read in May was The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang, which I rated 5 stars. This is the 3rd book in the Kiss Quotient series, which are kind of a collection of standalone stories which focus around a autistic main character and a romance that they pursue. In The Heart Principle, we are following Anna, who has autism. She is kind of a musical prodigy. She went to viral fame through a YouTube video of her playing violin on stage. In this book, she has a romance with Kwan, who is a relative of our love interests in the first 2 books. I love this series so much. Helen Hoang is 100% my favourite romance writer. She writes her characters so well, and I love how she writes autism in her books. In all 3 of the books that she's written so far, we have different aspects of autism that she talks about, and it's not just sort of one blanket fits all type of autism that you kind of tend to see in more popular media, in my opinion. She does have autism herself, I do not, so I can't say how accurate the representation for autism is. However, I think it is a great way to sort of view how autism affects different people. I also love the romances in her books as well. She writes the cutest, fluffiest romances, and they literally just make my heart swoon. I love them so much. So yeah, The Heart Principle was absolutely brilliant. My only real complaint with Helen Hoang's books is they do tend to wrap up very quickly. I do think that's sort of what you tend to find in the romance genre as a whole anyway. It's almost like she knows how to tell the story and she's not quite sure how to end it. But I did really love this book, and I really want to reread all of them now. I'm hoping to finally get them physically at some point because they are my favourite romance series. Honestly, I just can't recommend them enough. They are absolutely fantastic. The second book that I read in May was the Ex Hex by Erin Stirling, which I rated 2 stars. I did not like this one. So the Ex Hex is another romance following, can't remember the characters' names, but they are witches, and at the very start of the book the female love interest has broken up with the male love interest and she puts a curse on him, and using a Bed Bath & Beyond candle she doesn't really think that it's going to work, and then about 10 years later he comes back to their town and the curse is in full force. And so it's basically the story of them trying to lift this curse which has found itself from Reese, I think his name was, to the town. So they're trying to lift the curse from the town, and also they're kind of like rekindling their love for each other. I just didn't vibe with this very well. I liked the fantasy aspect of it and I liked the witchiness, but I didn't vibe with the characters at all. I don't think second chance romances are for me, and it's not a book that I ever want anything to do with again. I just found it really like ridiculous and over the top, I guess. I don't know. I did talk a lot more about my thoughts in it in my romance reading vlog, so I would say check that out for my full thoughts because it's been quite a while since I've read it now. I don't think Erin Stirling's writing is for me. In fact, I thought this was her debut novel, and when I found out she's written like 13 books previously, I thought, wow, it was bad. So going from a 5-star to a 2-star, I definitely think put a little bit of a damper on my reading mood for the rest of the month, and yeah. Apparently there is a sequel coming out and I definitely won't be reading that. I just think it was so bad, and I just don't want to think about it anymore. Then the third book I read in May was Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This one is in fact sapphic, so we have a lesbian and a bisexual love interest characters. This was the February Afterlight pick, I think, where I have this lovely green cover with the orange sprayed edges, and this I rated 4 stars. I think because I was starting to get into my slump at this point, I just kind of didn't want to read anything anymore. It took me quite a while to get through this, but in this one we are following Delilah, who goes back to her hometown to photograph her stepsister's wedding, where she comes across Clare, who is one of her stepsister's best friends, and they kind of start getting a flirtation with each other. Really enjoyed this, and I enjoyed the relationship between Clare and Delilah. I was going to call her Ashley then. I think just because of the mood I was in, I couldn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. There was something about Ashley Herring Blake's writing as well that I didn't entirely gel with, but I'm very excited to read the rest of the books in this trilogy. We are going to follow all 3 of Claire's friendship group in the trilogy, and I'm very excited for Iris's book, which will be the 3rd one. So I do have a little bit of a while to wait for it, but I really loved the characters in this. The friendship dynamic between all of them, as well as the romance, was fantastic. I think the way Ashley wrote Claire's relationship with her daughter and her daughter's father as well was lovely, and to see how that they co-parent with each other. I really did enjoy this. There was just something that didn't quite hit the mark for me. There was definitely a lot of chemistry between Clare and Delilah, and I did really appreciate that. So yeah, I do really recommend this one. It was great sapphic romance. Then I moved back into my comfort zone of fantasy and I read City of Lost Souls by Cassandra Clare, the 5th book in the Mortal Instruments series. And as you guys know, I've been reading this series as a part of By the Angel Along, which was created by the Becca Fowl. I will leave a link in the description to the announcement video for that. And basically, as a part of this read along, we've been reading one of Cassandra Clare's books every single month in this massive Shadowhunters universe that she's created. This is my first time reading this series and I'm having a great time with it. So this book in particular I rated 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I do feel like it was a little bit more of a filler book building up to what will be the finale. The 4th one is still my favourite so far. I think I just preferred what was going on plot-wise with that. In this series we're following Clare Frey, who finds herself wrapped up in the world of the Shadowhunters after she witnesses some people murdering someone in a nightclub who actually turns out to be a demon. This 5th book in the series, we are kind of very far from what happened in that, and this is kind of the 2nd book in the 2nd trilogy in that series. We have one more book to go, however it will be a little while before I get to that one because we're taking a break from the Mortal Instruments to read the Infernal Devices series. What I love about this series is it's very classic YA in the sense that it's easy to read, it's a little bit like junk food to me, and it's just kind of really chill. Like, you know it's not going to be high stakes, even though sometimes it definitely feels like it's high stakes. And I just love the simplicity of it, I guess. Not calling it a simple series, but it's just like you can just relax while you're reading it, I guess. I have been reading this series while also listening to the audiobooks. I'm starting to really dislike the narrators that they get for the audiobooks. They've kind of had a different narrator for every single one, and because of the lack of consistency it's just really starting to bug me, but I do enjoy listening and reading to this series at the same time. But yeah, I am really enjoying this series and I can't wait to see how it's going to end and to sort of break through what was the foundations for the Shadowhunters world and to see what happens in the rest of the world with all of our characters that we're going to explore. I think my favourite characters in this series are definitely Simon and Magnus, and I also love Magnus and Alec's relationship, and I'm really excited to read the series that centres around Alec and Magnus as well. So yeah, I'm having a great time reading this series and I just can't wait to see how it's going to end. So then I kind of took a little bit of a break from TBR books and I started reading some books that I'm actually still reading at the moment, which is why I'm not going to really mention them in this video because they're carrying over into June. So having sort of had a little bit of a break, I guess, from reading so intensely, we then had the Bookoplathon, and this is where most of my reading got done during May. With the Bookoplathon we get 2 prompts every 12 hours and I'm kind of trying to like build my TBR around what those prompts could be. I did have a stack of books that I'd planned on reading and we had the first 2 prompts well in advance, so those are the books that I obviously started with. So I'll talk you through the books that I read during Bookoplathon now and which prompts they were for. So firstly we had Life is Strange Volume 5, which is written by Emma Vieceli, Claudia Leonardi and Andrea Izzo, and this is the 5th volume in the Life is Strange series, which follows on from the video game Life is Strange, which features Max and Chloe, who are like childhood best friends who rekindle their friendship after Max comes back to her hometown for school and finds out she has time travel powers. So Max can reverse time and change things, which ultimately leads to something big happening at the end of the game, and this is the aftermath of one of the choices that you can choose in the game. I really love this series and I have loved seeing what happens next because it is canon, this comic series. It's canon what has happened to Chloe and Max, and I just love seeing them together on page, on screen. Like, they are a couple I just absolutely love. I love Chloe as well. She's just like amazing. I did rate this one 4 stars. It wasn't my favourite in the series. I'd rated all of the previous ones 5 stars, and I think it's because we are building up to the final volume, which will be volume 6, and I kind of feel like they're just kind of dragging it out at this point. Volume 4 definitely felt like it was building up to something really big, and we're still building up to that in this volume. So this was the one I read for short book for Bookoplathon, and yeah, 4 stars. Then the second book for Bookoplathon I read was All the Feels by Olivia Dade. So this I read for the Gods prompt, and this is the second book in the Spoiler Alert series, which kind of follows love interests of a cast of actors on this TV show, which is called Gods of the Gates, I believe. So in the first one we were following a fan of the series who wrote fan fiction, and she ends up in a relationship with one of the actors on the show. And in this one we are following Alex and Lauren, and Alex is an actor on the show and Lauren is kind of hired to be his babysitter because he is very prone to PR accidents, and Lauren is basically there to make sure he doesn't get into PR accidents while the final series of the show is about to air. So of course they develop a relationship with each other, and it's a kind kind of rivals to lovers or dislike to lovers kind of relationship. Lauren and Alex have amazing chemistry with each other, and I definitely felt like the flirty banter throughout, but I feel like the romance took way too long to kick in. So I rated this 4 stars. It wasn't until about the 200-page mark that we got any romance, and considering this is a 400-page book, like, I kind of want the romance to kick in maybe a little bit sooner than that. Like, it was slow burn, but not in the tense slow burn kind of way. It was kind of like they were just having banter with each other, and then all of a sudden the romance kicked in. Another complaint I had about this is that the epilogue was really nice, and a lot of what they talked about in the epilogue I wish had been on page, because it was so cute, and it's like, well, why didn't you just show us this on the page instead? I do really love this series. I definitely prefer the first book, but it was so nice to sort of see Alex and Lauren's relationship with each other. And this was the November Afterlight pick from 2021, which is why I have this really nice hardback edition with the pink sprayed edges. So then when we got to the second roll drop for Bookopathon, I had a little bit of a panic trying to figure out what I wanted to read. One of the prompts was to read an ebook or an audiobook, and so for that I chose Nevermore by Jessica Townsend, which I listened to on Audible. I did rate this 3 stars, and my main complaint about it was myself, because I was rushing through it, listening to it on 2.4 speed, trying to finish it as quickly as possible, so I couldn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to, and it's a book that I'm definitely going to have to reread if I want to continue the series. The audiobook was very good, which is why I picked it up. Basically, in Nevermore we are following Morrigan Crow, who is a cursed child, and she is destined to die, and essentially she's whisked away to the land of Nevermore to escape death and join the Wondrous Society. So we're following a series of trials that she completes throughout the book so that she can join the society, and I really enjoyed seeing these trials sort of go ahead. I love trials in books, kind of like a game scenario. I love all of that, but I couldn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to because I was rushing through it, so I didn't have time to sort of sit back and just enjoy the book. I did really enjoy the character Jupiter North. He was absolutely hilarious, and again the audiobook was very good, so I really do recommend the audiobook for this one. But yeah, I only rated it 3 stars because I just didn't give myself the chance to enjoy it properly. So the next book I read during Bookopathon was Remina by Junji Ito, and I used this one for the spooky prompt, and this is a horror manga which centers around this planet that is hurtling towards Earth and kind of just drives everybody crazy. When I picked this up, I thought it was going to be a sci-fi about the planet itself, and really it's more about mob mentality and what happens when people are influenced in a certain way. The planet itself is named after a girl called Remina, and everybody is attacking this girl thinking that she's the reason the planet is hurtling towards the Earth. And so it's kind of like the mob that are constantly trying to kill Remina and her father. I rated it 3 stars. It's definitely not my favourite Junji Ito I've ever read because I was expecting a totally different story, and so I just couldn't enjoy it because I was like, well, it wasn't what I was expecting, I guess. Definitely the blurb does not reveal that it's more about the mob mentality rather than the sci-fi elements, and I really wish that we had seen more of that sci-fi, spooky, no one in space can hear you scream type vibes. Yeah, I definitely think I could enjoy it more on a reread knowing what to expect. It wasn't my favourite Junji Ito. Another complaint I had about it was that a lot of Junji Ito's books tend to centre around a pretty unremarkable female character that everybody seems to be obsessed with, and at this point I'm a little bit fed up of seeing that kind of trope constantly appear in his books. It's like, please, just not everybody has to be in love with this one female character that is pretty unremarkable. Like, please. Especially because Remina in this I think is like about 16, and there's these adult men who are trying to pursue her like sexually, and it's like, please just leave the girl alone. I love Junji Ito, but not this one, I'm sorry, please don't hate me. Then I read Orange Volume 1 by Ichigo Takano, and this I used for both the young adult prompt and also the colour on the cover, and of course the colour on this is orange because it's called Orange. This is a YA manga following a girl after she receives a letter from her future self saying that if she doesn't change something about her life on the course it's on, one of her classmates is going to die, so she's kind of just trying to stop her classmate from dying. So I did rate this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I think I could have enjoyed it more had I not been reading it under the pressure of the 48-hour Bookopathon. This is kind of like a contemporary with a speculative twist. Wouldn't really describe it so much as sci-fi because the time travel aspect isn't very prominent. It's kind of more like contemporary with a little bit of romance, with a little bit of speculative fiction in there as well. I did really enjoy this. I'm very much looking forward to reading volume 2 in June. It's just a really lovely story and quite heartwarming, but also very sad. I would definitely say trigger warnings in this for suicide and like mental health in general, like poor mental health, because it was just really sad, but it was a very nice story and I would really recommend this. It was just so nice, you know, it was just something that really warms your heart. That's why I enjoyed it so much. And then finally in May I read Shatter by Tahereh Mafi, which is the first book in the Shatter series, and I used this for the water on the cover prompt for Book-a-thon and also the feed scroll prompt. So when I scrolled my feed, this was the first book that came up that I own. I rated this one 3 stars. I didn't finish it during Book-a-thon, but I think I read enough of it during the readathon that I could successfully say it could be completed. This is a YA dystopian about this girl who has these powers where if she touches anyone skin to skin, they will die. It's a very fast-paced story where she's kind of in this institution and she's trying to escape. A lot happens in this in such a short amount of pages. Like, it's a very short book for how much goes on, and I feel like I could have also enjoyed it more had I not been reading it under the pressures of Book-a-thon. I think I read about 220 pages in one sitting, which was great, but I kind of lost a little bit of the story because I was essentially rushing through it. There is also a romance in this. It's very insta-love, which I kind of knew to expect in this series because I think it's one of the main complaints a lot of people have about it, which is a shame because it was really good. I would definitely describe this as a bit of like X-Men meets The Hunger Games meets Divergent, and I really enjoyed the first Divergent book and I love The Hunger Games and I really like the X-Men movies, so it kind of should have been perfect for me. I think maybe just because I was rushing through it and also it's so fast paced, like I just couldn't keep up. But I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the books in the series with how this ended. It was very intriguing and I can't wait to see what happens to Juliet next. Something about this as well is a very unique writing style which a lot of people seem to dislike, but I quite enjoyed it. There's a disclaimer at the start of the book that says the writing style develops as the character Juliet develops. So at the very start it's very disjointed, numbers are written with numerals and there's a lot of strike throughs as well. The further we get through the book, the less that occurs, and you kind of see how Juliet develops as a character through the writing style. There is a lot of very strange metaphors as well, which I'm used to. I read a lot of J. Kristoff and it's something he's no stranger to, so I didn't mind the weird, almost nonsensical metaphors in there as well. But I did really enjoy the writing style of this and I'm very excited to see what happens next. So these are all the physical books that I read in May. Of course 3 of them were digital so I can't physically show you them. Yeah, I had a pretty good month in May considering I was feeling very slumpy, but I think the Book-a-thon definitely rejuvenated my joy for reading. I had a pretty good month in May and yeah, I don't know what else to say. So my favourite book that I read in May was the... what's it called? So my favourite book that I read in May was The Heart Principle. I just loved all the gooey feelings inside that it gave me while I was reading it. It's just so lovely and romantic and just perfection. The most disappointing book I will have to say is Remina by Junji Ito. I just was expecting a lot from this and unfortunately it just did not deliver. I don't hate Junji Ito though. I would still say he's one of my favourite writers. I just didn't love this book. And finally, my most surprising book I would say is Shatter by Tahereh Mafi, just because I've heard a lot of mixed things about it and I wasn't 100% sure what to expect, but it definitely surprised me with how it ended and also how much it managed to bring itself around for me towards the end, because I'm very excited to see what happens next. So that's it from me today, guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you read during May, if you've read any of the books that I have and what you thought of them and all that good stuff. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and also please do subscribe if you haven't already to see more of my face on your screen. Thank you again. I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!